The Arizona sun was a hammer, and the land was its anvil. In the heart of that unforgiving furnace, an Apache warrior named Tarak moved like a ghost. He wasn't looking for trouble. He was hunting deer. But what he found would change his life forever. It was a sound carried on the dry wind, a soft moan of pain, a sound that didn't belong. His warrior senses screamed that this was a trap. But something deeper, something human, pulled him forward. He crept to the edge of the canyon overlook, and his blood ran cold. Hanging from a twisted mesquite tree, like a broken doll, was a woman. She was white. Her hair was the color of spun gold, a stark contrast to the blood that stained her torn blue dress. Bandits. It had to be. Every instinct he had, every lesson from his elders, screamed at him to turn away. The settlers were his enemies. They had taken his land, killed his people. This was not his fight. But as he watched her chest rise and fall with the faintest of breaths, he knew he couldn't leave her. Honor demanded more. With the silence of a mountain cat, he scaled the tree. The blade of his knife flashed in the sun. The ropes snapped. She fell into his arms. She was lighter than a feather, fragile as a bird's wing, and up close her beauty was a physical blow. Skin like porcelain, lips parted in a silent plea. He carried her to a hidden alcove, a secret place with a spring that offered shade and life. He laid her gently on his blanket. As her eyelids fluttered, he braced himself for the fear, the scream. Her eyes opened, and Tarak found himself staring into a blue so deep it felt like he could fall in and never find his way out. Catherine's world returned as a swirl of pain and a powerful, masculine scent of leather and earth. A man loomed over her. He was a giant, his shoulders so broad they seemed to block out the sun. His skin was the color of rich bronze, his muscles carved from the canyon rock itself. Long black hair, adorned with feathers, framed a face that was both beautiful and terrifying. He was Apache, a savage. Everything she had ever been taught, every nightmare story she had ever heard, coalesced into a single, piercing scream. She scrambled backward, her back hitting the cold stone of the cave wall. "Please," she gasped. "Don't hurt me! My family has money! They'll pay you!" The warrior raised a hand, palm open. His voice was a low rumble, like distant thunder. "I will not harm you," he said, his English thick with an accent. "You are safe." But his words were just noise. She was trapped, at his mercy. "I saved you," he said, his dark eyes burning with an intensity that stopped her breath. "I found you hanging from a tree, left to die." His words slowly pierced her fog of terror. The bandits, the wagon train, the attack, it all came rushing back. "Your own people did this to you," the warrior continued, gesturing to the rope burns on her wrists. "Tell me who they were." Shame and horror washed over her. She couldn't speak of what they'd done, of the humiliation. His jaw tightened. A dangerous light flickered in his eyes. "They are gone now. You are under my protection." Her protection? The idea was insane. "You're my enemy," she whispered. A bitter smile touched his lips. "Perhaps. But an enemy can still recognize honor. And what was done to you was without honor." He moved with a fluid grace that was mesmerizing, tending to her wounds with hands that were surprisingly gentle. He cleaned her cuts with cool water from the spring, applying a poultice of herbs that soothed the burning pain. "What is your name?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Tarak." "Catherine," she replied. He repeated her name, and the sound of it in his deep voice sent a strange, unwelcome shiver down her spine. The world she knew was gone, burned away by violence and cruelty. She was alone in the desert with a man who should have been her greatest fear. But as she watched him move, as she felt his careful touch, she realized a terrifying truth. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of what she was starting to feel for him. The days that followed were a waking dream. Tarak became her teacher, and the desert became her classroom. He taught her the secret language of the land, which plants held water, which berries were poison. how to read the stories left in the dust by the paws of a coyote or the hooves of a deer. His patience was endless, his knowledge profound. Catherine, in turn, was a surprisingly quick student. The pampered girl from Boston, who had once fainted at the sight of a mouse, discovered a core of strength she never knew she possessed. The sun turned her porcelain skin to gold. The hard work of survival calloused her soft hands. And with every passing day, the chasm between their two worlds seemed to shrink. "You move like a wildflower," he told her one afternoon, a rare smile touching his lips. "Beautiful, but you fight the wind instead of bending with it." His words, meant as a lesson, felt like a caress. She found herself watching him constantly. The way his muscles moved beneath his skin as he drew his bow. The way the firelight danced on the sharp planes of his face. The deep, thoughtful look in his eyes when he spoke of the spirits of his ancestors. He was a warrior, a philosopher, a poet. He was everything she had never known she wanted. The nights were the hardest. They would sit on opposite sides of the small fire, the silence between them thick with unspoken words, with a tension that was both terrifying and exhilarating. "Why are you alone?" she asked him one evening, her voice soft. A shadow passed over his features. "The war took my brothers. My wife and child were taken by the white man's sickness." The simple, stark tragedy of his words pierced her heart. "I'm so sorry, Tarak." He looked at her then, his gaze so intense it felt like he could see into her soul. "Sorrow is a river that flows through all people, Catherine. White and Apache. The color of our skin does not change the color of our tears." And in that moment, he was no longer the Apache. She was no longer the white woman. They were just a man and a woman, two lonely souls who had found a strange and beautiful solace in the most unlikely of places. She knew she should be planning her escape. She knew she should be praying for rescue. But as she lay in her bedroll, listening to the sound of his steady breathing, a new and dangerous prayer formed in her heart. She prayed that no one would ever find them, but the world has a way of finding those who try to hide from it. One morning, the sound of horses echoed through the canyon. Tarak was on his feet in an instant, his body a coiled spring of lethal intent. "Stay back," he commanded, pulling her behind a cluster of rocks. But then a voice called out, a voice that turned Catherine's blood to ice. "Catherine, darling, we know you're here!" It was her mother, and she was not alone. With her were a dozen blue-coated cavalry soldiers, and at their head, his face a mask of grim determination, was Captain James Morrison, the man she had run away from, the fiancé she had left at the altar. The life she had tried to escape had just found her, and it had brought an army with it. The confrontation was a clash of two worlds. On one side stood Captain Morrison, the very picture of civilized authority, his uniform crisp, his saber gleaming. On the other stood Tarak, a primal force of nature, his power radiating from him like heat from the desert floor. And Catherine was caught in the middle. "Catherine, thank God!" her mother Margaret cried, stumbling toward her. "What has this savage done to you?" "He saved my life, mother," Catherine said, her voice shaking but firm. She positioned herself slightly in front of Tarak, a small, defiant shield. Morrison's eyes, the color of a winter sky, were fixed on Tarak. "Step away from the lady, Apache. Your games are over." "It is you who plays games, soldier," Tarak replied, his voice a low growl. "She was left for dead by your kind." "Lies," Morrison spat. "He's poisoned your mind, Catherine. Don't worry, my dear. I've come to take you home. We can still be married. I am prepared to be magnanimous, to overlook this incident." The condescension in his voice, the arrogant assumption that he could just reclaim her, ignited a fire in Catherine's soul. "Overlook it?" she shot back. "You mean overlook the fact that I have been shown more kindness and honor by this one man than I have ever known in my entire life?" A shocked murmur went through the soldiers. Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. "I am not going back, Captain," Catherine declared, the words feeling truer than any she had ever spoken. "My place is here." She turned to Tarak, her heart in her eyes. "My place is with you, if you'll have me." For a moment, the warrior's stoic mask crumbled, revealing a raw, staggering emotion. "Catherine," he breathed, "you know this is impossible." "The only thing that's impossible," she said, her voice ringing with conviction, "is leaving you." "I will not allow this," Morrison roared, his face turning a blotchy red. He drew his saber. "I will not let you throw your life away on a filthy, godless heathen." The insult was a spark in a powder keg. Tarak moved with a speed that was terrifying. He stepped in front of Catherine, catching Morrison's blade-wielding wrist in a grip of iron. With a contemptuous twist, he disarmed the captain, sending the saber skittering across the rocks. "I am Tarak," he said, his voice deadly quiet, "and I will not be spoken of in this way in the presence of the woman I love." The soldiers raised their rifles. The standoff had become a death sentence. "You see what he is?" Morrison shrieked, clutching his wrist. "An animal! Kill him! That is an order!" The soldiers hesitated, their eyes darting from their enraged captain to the defiant woman and the formidable warrior. But before a single shot could be fired, a new sound cut through the tension, a single high-pitched whistle from the cliffs above. Tarak's head snapped up. A look of disbelief, then dawning horror crossed his face. "What is it?" Catherine whispered. He didn't have time to answer. From the rocks all around them, figures began to rise. Silent, deadly, Apache warriors, dozens of them. Their faces were painted for war. Their bows were drawn, their arrows aimed not at the soldiers, but at Tarak. An old, grizzled warrior stepped forward, his face a mask of stone. He spoke in the Apache tongue, his words sharp and cold. Tarak replied, his voice strained. "What are they saying?" Catherine cried, her heart seizing with a new and terrible fear. Tarak turned to her, his face grim. "They are my people. My uncle. He says I have broken the law." "What law?" "By taking you, a white woman, I have brought the risk of a new war to our people. He says the price for this crime is my life." The world spun. This couldn't be happening. She had just found him, just declared her love for him. Morrison began to laugh, a wild, triumphant sound. "You see, my dear? Even his own kind know he's an animal. It seems you've chosen the losing side after all." He turned to the old warrior. "We will take the woman. You can have the traitor. Do what you will with him." The old Apache nodded slowly, his eyes, like chips of obsidian, fixed on Tarak with a look of profound sorrow and unbending law. Tarak was surrounded, betrayed by his own blood, sentenced to die, and Catherine was utterly, completely helpless. The canyon had become a trap, and the jaws were closing from all sides. The old warrior, Tarak's uncle, took a step forward. His name was Geronimo, a name that struck fear into the hearts of settlers across the territory. But now his gaze was fixed only on his nephew, and it was a look of stone-cold judgment. "You have forgotten your duty," Geronimo said in their native tongue, his voice a gravelly rasp. "You have let a white woman's pretty face make you weak. Her people are a plague upon this land, and you have brought that plague into our sacred places." "She is not a plague," Tarak argued, his voice low and tight with a barely controlled fury. "She has a good heart. She is brave." "A brave snake is still a snake," Geronimo retorted. "The law is the law. You know the price." Catherine watched the exchange, her mind reeling. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the finality in the old man's tone. She turned to Morrison, her eyes blazing. "You can't let them do this! He saved my life!" Morrison shrugged, a picture of smug satisfaction. "It's not my decision to make, my dear. It's tribal justice. He broke their rules. It's a shame, really. I was looking forward to killing him myself." Her mother, Margaret, seemed to have shrunk into herself, her face pale with shock. "Catherine, perhaps. Perhaps this is for the best. A clean break." "A clean break!" Catherine shrieked. "Mother, they are going to kill him!" She turned back to Tarak, her heart shattering. His face was a mask of grim resignation. He was a warrior, prepared to meet his fate with honor. But she saw the flicker of pain in his eyes when he looked at her, and it was more than she could bear. She did the only thing she could think to do. She ran and threw herself in front of Tarak, her arms spread wide, her body a human shield. "No!" she cried, her voice ringing with a power she didn't know she possessed. "If you want to kill him, you'll have to kill me first!" Geronimo's eyes widened in surprise. The other Apache warriors murmured amongst themselves. They had never seen a white woman display such courage, such loyalty to one of their own. "You would die for him?" Geronimo asked, his voice laced with disbelief. "I would," she said without hesitation, "because I love him, and because he is a better man than any of you. You speak of honor, but where is the honor in killing a man for an act of compassion? He saved me. Is that a crime?" The old warrior was silent for a long moment, studying her. The gears of his ancient mind seemed to be turning, reassessing. It was Morrison who broke the spell. Impatient and furious that his victory was being complicated, he made a fatal mistake. "Enough of this nonsense," he roared, drawing his pistol. "If you won't kill him, I will." He aimed not at Tarak, but at Catherine. His plan was diabolical. If he shot her, he could claim the savage had done it in a final act of defiance. But he underestimated the bond between the two lovers. The instant Morrison raised his pistol, Tarak moved. He shoved Catherine to the ground and charged, not with a weapon, but with his bare hands. He moved with a blur of speed that left the soldiers and even his own people stunned. He hit Morrison like a thunderbolt, the two of them crashing to the ground. The canyon exploded into chaos. The soldiers, seeing their captain attacked, raised their rifles. The Apaches, seeing their kinsmen in a fight, knocked their arrows, but a single, powerful voice cut through the madness. "Enough!" It was Geronimo. He stood with his arms raised, a figure of absolute authority. "This is not our way," he boomed, his gaze sweeping over his warriors. "We do not settle our disputes with the white man's chaos!" He turned his piercing gaze on Morrison, who was struggling under Tarak's powerful grip. "And you, soldier chief, you have shown your true heart. You would shoot an unarmed woman to get what you want. You have no honor." The grizzled sergeant from the cavalry unit stepped forward, his face grim. "The captain is right, sir," he said, addressing Geronimo with a surprising respect. "That's not how we do things either. Captain Morrison, you are relieved of command." Morrison stared in disbelief as his own men lowered their weapons and looked away from him. His authority had evaporated. Geronimo looked at Tarak, who was still pinning Morrison to the ground. He looked at Catherine, who was slowly getting to her feet, her eyes shining with tears of relief and love. He saw the unbreakable bond between them. He saw that what his nephew felt was not weakness, but a new and powerful kind of strength. The law, he realized, was not always justice. "The spirits have spoken today," Geronimo declared, his voice ringing with the weight of a verdict. "They have shown us that the heart does not recognize the boundaries our hatreds have drawn. Tarak, you did not bring a plague among us. You brought a warrior." He looked at Catherine with a new respect. "A white dove with the heart of an eagle." He turned to his men. "The law is satisfied. Tarak's life is his own, and the woman. She is his." A cheer went up from the Apache warriors, a sound of relief and approval. Tarak released Morrison, who was hauled to his feet by the sergeant. "You'll be facing a court-martial for this, Captain," the sergeant said, his voice cold. As the soldiers took a disgraced Morrison into custody, Margaret Whitmore approached her daughter. Her face was a mixture of awe and dawning understanding. "I was wrong," she whispered. "He is a good man, Catherine. An honorable man." She looked at Tarak and gave a slight, respectful bow of her head. "Take care of my daughter, son of Mountain Wolf." "With my life," Tarak promised. The world had turned upside down. Enemies had become allies. Laws had been rewritten by love. As the soldiers and the Apaches departed, leaving the canyon in a profound and peaceful silence, Tarak pulled Catherine into his arms. The kiss they shared was not one of desperate passion, but of deep, soul-shaking relief. It was a kiss that sealed a promise, a new beginning forged in the crucible of impossible choices. "I told you we would make our own world," Catherine whispered against his chest. "And so we shall, my eagle-hearted dove," Tarak replied, his voice thick with an emotion he no longer had to hide. So we shall. They walked hand in hand toward the hidden valley, their future an unwritten story, their love the only map they would ever need. And so, a love that was born in violence and defiance found its peace. Catherine and Tarak proved that the boundaries between people are not as strong as the bridges a courageous heart can build. Their story reminds us that love isn't about finding someone your world accepts. It's about finding the person who becomes your world. They chose not to be defined by the hatred of their people, but to define a new future for themselves. A future built on honor, respect, and a love so powerful it literally rewrote the law. What do you think? Is love truly powerful enough to overcome centuries of hate? Let us know in the comments below. And if you believe that epic love stories like this deserve to be told, do us a huge favor and hit that subscribe button. It helps us more than you know and ensures you won't miss another story that proves the heart is the wildest frontier of all. Thanks for watching.